Welcome to the Contractor Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Phillips. This show exists to help small business owners like you escape the tyranny of contractor prison and enter the bliss of contractor freedom so you can have the time, money, and freedom to live your life with purpose beyond your business. As a certified human behavior consultant in DISC personality styles and motivators, I'll be sharing with you skills for life, love, leadership, and business. I'll also be connecting you with experts that can help you scale your business and your life. So if you want to build the business and life of your dreams, then you are in the right place. Let's go. I've got a special treat for you today. I've got with us Tom Droste, CEO of Estimate Rocket. And Tom coaches company leaders in sales and profit planning, and guess what? Software implementation as well. In case you don't know, Estimate Rocket, it's an all-in-one business management platform, software for contractors that helps them run their entire business, they say from lead to paid, all on one platform. So let's jump right into it. Tom, welcome to the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Jason. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Me as well. Quick question. How long has Estimate Rocket been a thing?
Sure. Estimate Rocket's been a thing for about 7 years.
So
7
what,
years in,
did you have a software background or a contracting background? What gave birth?
Yeah, so I started in accounting. That's what I went to school for, and did that for 2 years and decided this isn't a lot of fun, but I started using computers in my accounting career. And I said, this is fun. And I got spreadsheets, which at the time were a brand new phenomenon, and just really got hooked on it. I went and quit my great high paying, full benefits job as an accountant and went to work at a computer store at the time. So that was I found out recently that my father-in-law thought I was absolutely a lunatic for quitting this great job I had with benefits and everything and going to a computer store. I was at the computer store for about a year, and then I started helping people do business things with their computers. And I just really got hooked on it. And then that kind of morphed into building applications. And this is actually my second software company. The first one did a whole different area of work, but I will say that one of the first things I ever wrote was actually an estimating program for a plumber. And this was back in the day when data was stored on these little things called floppy disks. We're going way, way back. And we complain about how things are slow and not enough capacity. And we're talking days when it wasn't a meg that you were sending for a photo. You were lucky if you could send 30K.
Yeah, you don't know what slow is until you have to deal with the old floppy disks.
Exactly. When I started this company, the company is actually called Logical Engine, and we were doing projects basically for people who needed software. And we got into doing an estimating application actually for concrete lifting companies. And that's how we got it. That was really the start of it. It was super simple, did very little. And as we grew it, we saw the need for a lot more than what we were doing with that application and expanded it to other trades and really just...
You've been 7 years is quite a long time for software these days. And what are, just being associated with the painting industry in particular, what are some positive trends you've seen over the last 7 years?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones is there's been a real focus on people, on your team members, and making the trades a place where you can actually have a real career and a lot of opportunities. And maybe part of that has been the need, because obviously there's a need out there for contractors, but it's been a really positive trend because I see companies in the contracting area now talking about things like culture. And I don't think they talked much about that 10 years ago or 5 years ago even. It really is a new phenomenon. And it's actually influenced my company too, because I came up old school and, hey, you got to work, you do your job. Okay, if you like it, that's a bonus, but that's how it is. And that's not how it is anymore. People really do want to have a sense of belonging, and they want to have a sense of purpose of where they're going and what the possibilities are. And I see that as an absolutely great trend. I hope it's enough to keep the trades growing the way they need to.
I think that's a great insight. If you think about this, if you've got someone who loves the company they work for and the people they work with, and they're using their skills for something they feel is worthwhile, they're going to be way more productive. Paying attention to culture.
Way more productive.
Not just to have a soft, fun, hey, let's have some sleeping pods and free vending machines or whatever all around, but it's win for everybody. And I like to say, look, we're not really in the painting business or the contracting business. We're all in the people business. Tom, what on the flip side of that coin, What are some negative trends that you've seen over the last 7 years?
I think things were really pretty positive, I'll say, until COVID hit. And I think COVID really took a lot of steam out of a lot of people in a lot of different areas. In a lot of respects, I think contractors got to keep going a little more than other companies did. We were lucky because we were considered
Essential.
required people and could still do our work. Yeah, essential workers. And the fact is, most of our company is remote. I have Florida, South Carolina, Utah, Arkansas, and St. Louis right now as our area where our people are located. And we meet a lot just like we're meeting now. We're video pictures of
Well,
each other.
that's wonderful. So you don't need a big, huge office building with helps keep overhead low, right?
No, no. Yeah, it does. I probably have an office that's about 4 times bigger because when we started, the Logical Engine actually started like 12 years ago, and then Esrim Rocket's about 7 years old. We thought, oh, we're going to need a big office. We're going to need all kinds of people, and like, still got the big office, but
Yeah,
it's just
we
that
were in a
full.
similar position up until last year. Most of the contractor freedom is about elevating the lives of contractors so they can live
Right.
their life with greater freedom and purpose. And so we talk about time, money, and freedom quite a bit. And one of the ways to freedom, the money component, and just about not everybody, but just about
Right.
all the contractors I speak with want to grow their business. And there's
Right.
there's these plateaus, and there's this somewhat elusive 5 million mark. And I know you like to talk about that as well.
Right.
And so obviously on the back end of things, you have access to all kinds of data.
Right.
How many contractors do you think, or what percentage actually hit that 5 million mark?
It's a pretty small percentage. If I looked at our demographics, say maybe 10% make that and above, and it seems like that's one of the big magic numbers, I think, because over that it seems to accelerate. And I think there's a lot of things that happen at that size where you have the revenues to have the amount of people that you need to staff properly, and you're not constantly struggling for who's going to do what because everybody's already full up with stuff to do. But between there's a whole bunch of hurdles. There's the 500,000 hurdle, and there's the $1 million hurdle, and then there's the $2 million hurdle, and it is really fascinating how things happen in between those hurdles. You're knocking yourself out, you hit the hurdle, everything's cool for a while, but you're not going anywhere. And then all of a sudden you hustle and you get the next hurdle, and it's quite a ride. Which gets back to you also have to you have to love what you do, and I think you brought that up in terms of your own, even as the leader. You have to be enjoying something about what you're doing, or you're not going to be productive. When I've gone through those phases where why am I not getting anything done right now? And it's usually because I'm just not having, and again, we all know fun. When we say having fun, it doesn't mean that this is a party. It means that you're enjoying the people you're working with and the things that you're doing and what you're creating. And yeah, there's hassles and headaches, but as long as there's enough of the good stuff rolled in there, it really does make it worthwhile. It makes you want to get up in the morning and go do your thing.
I just spoke with a contractor the other day. He's at the 500,000 level. And he said, Jason,
Yeah.
this is the company I prayed for, but I can't keep up. He was like, I'm in contractor prison. And I just know in my own experience, and then I see what I've done. I see the old me and the struggles that I went through growth in all of these other guys and guys and gals. And we have to see things different. We have to think different.
Mm-hmm.
And at those different levels, if you're doing under a million, or at least 500,000 or less, you're thinking about how to deliver the widget, how to make that widget, right? What have you seen in the contractors that you guys work with, the differences in mindset or leadership even?
Yeah, I think there's two big things that stick out. One is delegating, and that's hard at every level as well, because when you think you're a good delegator, you're not yet. And that happens over and over again, right? Where there's certain things you get to that comfort level with delegating, and then you got to build up again to get that delegation. And I think, and I'm a late delegator, not an early delegator, which it's a handicap. It really can slow down your growth, and learning to do that. Yeah, we all do. It's almost impossible to avoid, but it does help having resources like yourself that people can talk to and share, because a lot of it is story sharing, and honest story sharing, not just the beautiful stuff, but the hard stuff too, that gets people to realize, wow, everybody's been through this. We're all suffering these same things, all experiencing these same things. This is not unique. This is something we all go through. That's
there's this
really important.
time when we feel like we're all alone. Now, once you get connected and your eyes are just open, you're like, oh man,
Right.
wow, there's other people just like me everywhere. And how that guy or that gal over
Right.
there, they broke through it. What did they
Yeah.
do? Wow, something new is
Right.
possible.
Right.
It opens up your mind and to see the way that things
Yeah.
structure. And even I think no matter what level you're at, there's these glass ceilings, these beliefs I even
Hmm.
find in myself. I'm drawn to do certain things. And I have to remind myself, no, Jason, you need to be delegating this because you've got someone else on your team that can do this. And sometimes I'm
Right.
like, I'm the only one that can do this. Maybe that other person can learn. But there's all these little
Yeah.
default thoughts that we have, or even you could even say lies that we believe that really we
Yeah.
really
For
truly
sure.
are the lid. I firmly believe in John Maxwell's law of the lid. We are the limiting factor on our business. So
No
how about
question.
these guys there's a lot of guys at that $1 million annual revenue right there.
Hmm.
And to
Yeah.
get to that next hump, which is there's at least one more hump between 1 and 5, at least one, if not two.
Oh, for sure. At
So
least,
what
yeah.
things do you think guys running a successful $1 million operation, what do you think he needs to do to get
Hmm.
to that 2.5, $5 million range?
Needs to make sure, which is the second part of the comes after delegation, or maybe probably before delegation, but it's systems, it's standard operating procedures for things. If you don't have them, and that's one of the big barriers to the reason there's no one else that can do it except me, is because I haven't told anyone else how to do it. It's that simple. And I think everybody gets afraid of that standard operating procedure or systems. It's really just outlining a set of steps to accomplish a task. That's all it is, and putting a heading on it, so when somebody needs to do something, they go, oh, that's what I'm trying to do. Yeah.
But we
Okay, this
overcomplicate
is
it.
how
We
we
think
do
we've got
that.
to write a book. And
It's true. And it's like you need 20% to get
exactly.
80%
One of
compliance,
the
or
most
something
powerful
along
things
those
that I
lines.
learned on that subject is that a checklist is to help you not forget the most obvious things. It's not to teach you how to do the job.
Right.
It's to help you not forget the most obvious things.
Right.
And that was empowering to me, that I could take most of our processes and just boil them down to one page and just start there. That may not be your
Right.
complete training program, but you can
Right.
take a guy and say, hey, for instance, look, I know you know how to paint,
Right.
or I know you how to do XYZ. These are the steps, specific steps at our company. Here's how we do it. And not at
Right.
least, and I think there's a
Yeah.
benefit to that too, is that one, you can improve that list, but two, which I think is possibly even more powerful, is you have a team of people that are accustomed to following a process. And one of the most difficult things is to take people that have had to figure it out and do it because they're hardworking people. They want to do the right thing, but they end up what we call freelancing
Yeah.
because we don't have a way to do it. So they have to just do their best. But to get those
Right.
people to change their ingrained habits to follow a process is tremendously difficult. And so what I teach contractors is, you guys, start with something. If it's 5 bullet points or check boxes, and if it's terrible, at least you're going to have that new person following a process. And if you add that 6th item, 7th item, they're going to be used to consulting the checklist.
Yeah. That's
So
really huge.
does Estimate Rocket help with some of that?
Actually, it helps with a lot of it. It helps with the general project and workflow from beginning into end. And we do actually, probably in the last year, we introduced a to-do feature where you can map out your to-do list. Now, it's not necessarily a replacement for a process sheet or something that goes in the work order that is that list of, like you said, bullet points. It doesn't necessarily have to be something you check off. It needs to be something you reference to say, okay, yep, here's what we're about to close out. What do we need to do? Oh, yeah, we got to go make sure we talk to Mrs. Jones and tell her what we did and when we'll be back, or those kinds of things.
What is
Absolutely
this to do
helps a lot
feature?
with
How
those
does, what
things.
is it for instance, hey, I've got to I've got to go pick up some touch-up paint at the store and deliver it to her on Monday. Is it that?
Yep, and you can notify if you've got someone who orders the materials, or the office manager, or someone who does that stuff, you can notify them in a message and say, hey, I'm going to need this many more materials. And then in the to-do, it'll pop, as you set up the to-do, it'll also pop up on your dashboard that, hey, this is what you do
That's
and
a
when you got to
great
do it.
feature. One of the things that I feel like my company has struggled with, and again, just about everybody. Let's say you quote, wrap up a job and you get that final payment, but there's this little hanging detail, for instance, proverbially just talking about that quart of touch-up paint or whatever it is. And those tiny details are out of sight, out of mind. And now you take someone who was a huge promoter of your company and you ignore them and you let them down. And now they become a dissatisfied detractor telling a story. And we have a term at our company and we say is the sale final. And what that means is the sale is final when all promises are delivered in both directions. That means the customer has paid us every penny they promised, and we have delivered every promise to them. So that way, if we've got to go back, the sale is not final. Yeah, they don't owe a penny. They already paid, but the sale is not final. And so I think that's great that you've got a feature in there to help even the most well-intentioned person. If you don't have a system to make sure that those things get done, you're going to end up with, they're not going to get done. They're just not. Yeah.
That's why we love the follow-ups, the automated follow-ups, because there's even an automated follow-up for when the project's complete.
Okay, thinking about the name of the software is Estimate Rocket. So an outsider is going to think, oh, this helps me create estimates. But obviously, Estimate Rocket is so much more than that. And again, you're saying from lead to paid. So definitely, what are the major components of the software?
Sure. So from inbound lead comes to us. We don't get you the leads, but we've got the facility for tracking it from lead all the way through the project. That'll initiate a campaign to schedule an appointment if you haven't already made an appointment. It'll track the appointments on the calendar for you, for your sales team, by person, by who you assign that particular project to, or that step of the project to. It'll schedule the appointment for the estimate. The estimator goes on site or does it remotely, however you want to do that. They build that, they send it out. It sets up a follow up with the customer and to remind you that you need to follow up on this till you close the deal. It moves into the work order phase. So at that point, you can create a deposit invoice. If you get deposit invoices, you are following up with the customer at that point to schedule an appointment to actually do the work. So remind you to do that and you follow up with that. Schedule the appointment. You can schedule your crews out. You can create the to-dos that you need for this project. So those are all set to go. And then follows through all the way through to completion. And that includes job costing along the way. So you can be tracking your hours and you can be tracking your costs with the job. We're very big on, my accounting background leads me to everything being very tight from an accounting standpoint as well. So you got your estimates are costed, so you know what the potential profit is for it. And then after you've job costed, you can see the difference between what you estimated your performance in your job was going to be and what your actual results were. And there's people who are assigned accountability all the way along throughout the project. We know who estimated it. We know who owns the project. We know who worked the project and completed it, the crew, whatever, either the crew or the supervisor. And then we know who did the invoice and closed the project out. So it really keeps track all the way through.
Really like a complete CRM.
Yeah, it's a complete CRM and project management system.
The fact that the job costing is built in. At my company, our project managers are incentivized on a per project basis for hitting budget. And having a system that helps you do that it makes life a whole lot easier. And I know so many people, they're not using any system at all. And that's not scalable.
Right.
They're working hard. Hard work is not scalable. You'll hit a ceiling real quick. Talking about numbers, I teach the guys and gals, there's that everybody says, know your numbers. We all say that. We hear it constantly. It's beaten into us. But to me, there's three types of numbers. There's your profit formula, or target allocation percentages. And then there's your funnel metrics, like your efficiencies in your appointment set rate, your closing rate, and all your funnel metrics. And then there's these, what I call them, buckets. Okay. And a classic bucket would be a backlog, the amount of work that you have contracted, but you haven't started or scheduled, maybe, depending on how you measure that. And having a healthy backlog is a key. Sometimes if your backlog is way too high, then you're going to be constantly taking calls and begging people not to cancel and dealing with dissatisfaction. And if your backlog is too slow, you're not going to be able to fill each day with work for your crew, right? It's a buffer zone.
Sure.
What do you guys see from your end as best practices because there's hiring decisions that need to be made based on that data.
Yeah. That's my first. And backlog is definitely one of my big hot buttons, because especially as you're growing and especially when you're in the early stages, to me, backlog, and I think back to when I first started my business eons ago. And backlog was what gave me the comfort to hire people. I mean, when I knew, hey, I got this much work going, I know this much is in the queue, I got to hire someone now. And I can, because I know I've got the work to satisfy them. In fact, if I hire someone, I'll be able to get some of the work that I've scheduled out farther done sooner. And then as I continue to build, I will be able to hire even another team member as I need them. It really, to me, makes the world go round. The balancing act is what's the right size of backlog. And that is a difficult thing because it's going to fluctuate.
I've run the gamut in the backlog. Now, granted, some of the companies that are in the far north states with extreme winters, they're booking months and months out.
Right.
So their backlog looks totally different than our seasonality here in Dallas. In Dallas,
Sure.
we have some cold weather in January and February, and exteriors are definitely slower during that time, but we lose very few days a year where we can't paint. But we have this seasonal, what we really want is we want to turn every job from contract to final in 30 days during the slow season, and during the busy season, 45 days for us. That's just our turn time. We measure backlog on our end for all projects that aren't scheduled now, but we only schedule 7 days into the future. And that's probably unique. We only put 7 days out on the calendar. So anything beyond that or that's not scheduled, we consider that backlog. And we generally want that number to be 2 to 4 weeks of production for us. Once we go beyond that, then we start dealing with a lot of dissatisfaction. And of course, when it starts dipping down lower, we've got a lot of work, or we've got work, but that doesn't mean that work's ready to get on the schedule now. The client's waiting on the carpet or the this or the that, or there's some reason why they can't get it. So there's this optimal amount for us. And I know that's a real struggle for contractors. But one of the things that really helps us is knowing on an annual basis, what does our seasonal curve look like? And we can say, hey, we're expecting leads to come in at this time, and then shortly following that, sales are going to increase. We're going to begin ramping up production, but even as we ramp up production, that backlog is going to grow faster than we can onboard people. And there's some science and there's some art, but putting the data to it really helps us. So does Estimate Rocket help report on your backlog and the aging of it?
Absolutely helps on your backlog and the aging of it. You can get both a scheduled backlog, which in your case would be 7 days. You might want, then we have an accepted backlog. So it's accepted but not scheduled. That really is a relatively big bucket. So that's whatever is left that isn't yet scheduled. So it's difficult without putting a date on it to be able to give it an aging 30, 60, 90 day type thing, which we do for open estimates. We do for open invoices. Gosh, I'm thinking now, do we do that for open work orders? And if we don't, I think we will be doing that.
There's other backlogs that we measure at our company too. For instance, how many appointments are on the schedule in the future? And we actually, we also measure separately how many of those appointments are scheduled further than 5 calendar days into the future, because we know that those are going to have a higher cancellation rate. And a lot of times that cancellation rate is the last minute, oh crud, I just got a reminder Phillips is coming in an hour. I don't need them anymore. So then we end up with a hole on our schedule that we don't fill.
Yeah.
And even so, we found that our conversion rate on those appointments starts dramatically dropping off the longer. So we measure speed to appointment. We measure speed to lead. That's our first contact, then speed to appointment. And anyway, so we like to measure those buckets. And I love that your system helps facilitate during the backlog.
Yeah, I don't have enough time in the day to do all the reports that we have data to back up.
Nice.
Let's put it that way.
Very nice. Hey, by the way, there's this thing you talk about called the content offer.
Yeah.
What is that?
We've done a couple things that we've produced because we like to produce things that'll help people. One of them is I created this what if spreadsheet that is really a simple tool to plug in a handful of numbers and what your actual current numbers are, and then what your what if numbers are, and see instantly what the impact is. Simple example is I got 2 people right now, or 1.5 people right now. And if I had 3, what would my revenue potential be at my current billing rate, and et cetera, et cetera. There's probably 7 or 8 variables that it has, but it really makes it quick to see, this is the impact of you adding 1 person. This is the impact of you adding 4 people on again, your revenue potential. And then it does and your gross profit potential. It looks at what's your average labor cost per hour versus your average charge rate, what's your average material cost, and it'll bring you down to a gross profit number
Is
really
that like a
quickly.
downloadable
It's kind of fun.
resource, or how would listeners get access I'd like to include that in the podcast episode description. I can always get it from you later.
Sure.
I'd love to include that.
It's actually literally just what if download as one word, estimaterocket.com
okay.
what if
Easy
download, but I'll
enough.
shoot it on
I
an
bet
email.
I bet they'll find that very helpful. I'll have to check it out.
It's fun. It is a Google sheet. It's a Google sheet, and the link brings it to you in template mode. So it up at the top it says use template, and once you do that, it becomes a Google sheet in your drive, and it's all yours.
I've been running these what if scenarios forever, and I love the power of seeing what incremental improvements can do.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, some seemingly little changes like adding a buck to your charge rate, your billing rate. Once you got a group of a bigger crew, that can be very material.
When you're talking about the bottom line, right? Regarding Estimate Rocket in particular, what would you say is a treasure in there that you feel you wish more people knew how awesome this feature was?
Yeah, the built-in estimating templates that you can of course adjust to your needs, I think are the greatest thing since sliced bread, but then we created them. So I would think that. But it makes it, and this is a delegation thing. At some point, as you're growing and you want a new estimator, you need to delegate that estimating to another person. And if you don't have a system for it, you can't do that. You can't disseminate your 10 years or 20 years of estimating experience in any short period of time. And these templates give you the ability to encapsulate your production rates and easily have a almost checklist-like form for them to measure and count and come up with a meaningful estimate project.
That's so
probably
important.
the biggest.
For the longest time, we didn't have a good system for the longest time, and I could train my first level guys how to do it, but the moment I wasn't doing the training anymore, and someone else was doing it, it quickly diluted, and it made all the difference in the world when I said, okay, I just need my guys to be able to measure and count and fill in the blanks. That's all I want them to do: measure, count, and fill in the blanks, and spend their time uncovering customer needs and wants and developing the rapport, expertise, and not spending a lot of time trying to figure out what's the number, making it easy.
Right, absolutely. It's the observation that's really the thing that they need to spend their time on, is observing and, as you said, making a relationship with the potential customer, because those are the things that they do need to capture some stuff that's beyond measuring and counting for sure.
So I know that one of the toughest things to do at a company, no matter the size, is to get on board with a new platform, software, program, whatever. And a lot of small business owners are not very techy. And what does that look like with Estimate Rocket? Let's just say someone says, man, I want to try Estimate Rocket. Is that a daunting task? Or can it be made easy?
It can be made easy. I shouldn't say that. You have to put in the work. Like anything else, any skill you've ever built, you have to put in the work. We can make it as easy as it can be for you and have some steps to do it, but you do have to invest the time. It's not, because you have to trust it. So if you don't put in the time, and I mean, the first thing we most usually tell people is take an estimate that you're really proud of, that you've done fairly recently, that worked properly for you, and plug that into Estimate Rocket and see what you get. And 9 times out of 10, they're within a couple $100 of what their proposal was. And it tells them how many hours, it's the estimated hours, it tells them the estimated materials. And that's the aha moment, but you got to do that. And you got to do that when you're not at a customer site for that first time. So that's probably that's our biggest hurdle, is to get people to say, okay, I'm going to dedicate a couple hours. Somebody sent in a reference to us the other day that said, for every hour I invest in Estimate Rocket, I get 4 hours back. And I was like, I could not have heard anything better than that.
By the way, I always thought that Estimate Rocket was for painting only, till I met some friends that are customers that they're, oh no, we do gutters and roofing in there. It's okay.
There's quite a few trades.
So that's good to know. Guys, if you're listening and you do roofing, more, Estimate Rocket can handle more than just painting. There's this age-old, Tom, there's this age-old conflict, tension, sometimes we call it a tension to manage, not a problem to solve, between sales and production. One guy does the estimate or the proposal and sells it, and then production gets it, and they're like, Mr. Customer, they didn't tell us this was included, or they didn't set that expectation, and there's this friction there.
Right.
And we call that the handoff at our company, the handoff. Do you guys, does your platform have anything to help communicate some clarity from the sales department to the production department?
Yeah, there's a variety of ways to do that. One is every line item in a project has both customer facing text and information and internal information. So when the estimators out there are working on their estimate, they can document what they saw or things that were oddball or things that the crew may need to know about when they get out there or things to watch out for. You're coming out with an estimated amount. If you're using the estimating system and you come out with a costed estimate at a certain gross profit, and you're using the hours calculation. So it's saying, hey, based on your production rates, this is what we're estimating the hours to be. This is what we're estimating the materials to be. And then your job costing, then we have a report where you can see who the estimator was or who the project owner was, and you can see who the crew was, and you can have them come in and for a meeting, and you can look at all the details in the project right in one place and start asking questions. At the end of the day, it's going to boil down to asking some questions and maybe working through those procedures so that the estimator is making more documentation or the crew has better instructions, because in the work orders, you can also detail out things in the work orders by line item in terms of procedures and things you'd want them to do, ways you want them to do things, especially if it's some complex process or you're using some special product that requires different handling than a normal latex coating would require. So there's a variety of ways to that, but the best thing is the profitability report that you can get at once you've completed the project and job costed it. Shows you what you estimated hours, estimated dollars, actual dollars, estimated cost, actual costs, and the variances. So it makes it really easy to sort that and say, oh, look at all these red ones. Those are ones where we didn't make them that we predicted we were going to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you can have it can be a good, healthy conversation, because the way you describe this problem is the problem. Like, people aren't communicating what the estimator may not be communicating what they observed, and then the crew gets out there and they end up spending a bunch of extra time because the estimator didn't write down, hey, you need to do it in this order on this project, or just some information that was germane to this, some nuance about this project. So that communications, I think, is key. We have note taking that goes along through the whole project. So everybody, you do something, you can leave a note about what you did, both crew and internal. So there's lots of ways.
On the sales side of it, does the system support digital signatures in the home? Do you sign on the screen? Sure. Is that how it works, or do you? Okay.
Yeah, right on the screen. So what we have a customer portal. So what happens is the estimator will do his thing, complete the estimate, and then bring them to the customer portal. Pull up the customer portal screen, which just has obviously the customer facing information, and hand their tablet over to the customer, and the customer can bring it up, review it, and sign on the spot.
Easy to purchase. Tom, what about a lot of companies these days are using Company Cam? Is there a photo or a feature or an integration with apps like that? How do you guys handle that?
Yeah, we actually have our own built-in full photo capabilities. Doesn't quite, Company Cam definitely does some things we don't, and we have probably one of the best Company Cam integrations out there, where when you turn on the Company Cam integration, when you click on the upload a photo, it loads Company Cam. So you're actually taking them through Company Cam, and we're then syncing them into our product.
So you've got native
and they're still in Company Cam.
Okay, that's pretty awesome. Yeah. Another standard, and I don't know the answer to this, that's why I'm asking. Our guys present a payment option with every proposal. And does Estimate Rocket have the ability to automatically calculate, say, a low interest payment based on a 9.99% rate on 84 months or something like that?
Not currently, but we're very shortly going to be releasing an integration to a firm, so they could present that as a payment option when they present this.
That is super cool. Wow.
Yeah. And that, again, is integrated into the how do you want to pay, credit card, ACH, or
so
a firm.
Right there. I know there's quite a bit of contractors that are using Estimate Rocket. And again, I mean, didn't have you here necessarily say, hey, this is an Estimate Rocket podcast. I wanted to talk to Tom, but I couldn't.
Sure.
I couldn't help but ask you about the software, because I know you've built the software to solve problems for contractors, right? And
right.
Tom, what did we not talk about that we should have talked about today?
Boy, we covered a lot of ground today, Jason. I I mean, we could probably go on all afternoon, but
I
I
would
think
say
you did a
I
pretty
would
good
say
job
so.
on it.
We covered a lot of ground. What's the if someone wants to connect with you or with Estimate Rocket, what's the best way to
Sure.
get in contact with you guys?
Best way is you can email me at tom@estimaterocket.com. If you want to chat with one of our awesome people or call, you can call 978-379-7979.
Tom, man, this has been valuable, and I want to thank you for just coming on today and sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, your expertise with us. And I wish you the best.
Well, it's absolutely a pleasure, and I really appreciate being here. Love when we get a chance to talk about challenges and things people are facing
Indeed.
because they're huge.
Contractors, thanks for tuning in today. And I hope you've gotten some nuggets from this episode. Let's go out there, go get it. Hey, contractors, I want to invite you to connect. If you want to get connected with the Contractor Freedom community, simply point your browser to contractorfreedom.live. That's contractorfreedom.live. On there, you'll find the link to our Facebook private group, our page, our newsletter. You'll find a link to our podcast. So I just want to invite you to come on over, join the community. I look forward to getting to know you more. Thanks for listening in today. Ball.